I had some conversation with some different leaders, and they were talking about the Truman property, and some things started developing. And then the next day or two, somebody else came through and talked to me about the Truman property. We have 160 acres debt-free right there on the highway, ready to do something that God gave us sovereignly as a gift. I probably had 5 important conversations about the Truman property in 5 years. And I've had 10 important conversations in the last 20 days. The dominoes are going down. Something is happening with the Truman property related to even touching the nation of Israel, and what's happening in the end times is like, I am like really paying attention.
One day, we want to see what we call the United Nations of Prayer. And the United Nations of Prayer, I hope, will be a part of this facility. I'm just making up this number. It'd be like 1 million square feet, a real big facility with prayer rooms and facilities for all kinds of prayer ministries from around the nations, United Nations of Prayer. Thinking of naming this the Truman Legacy Park. And Truman's legacy was intercession for Israel politically. Truman's legacy, he started the United Nations. So the United Nations of Prayer, this is probably the end of the story. This is maybe 10 years from now. I imagine that in front of this, we have this big circle of flags like at the United Nations. And it's like I don't know the number, but a circle, 100 flags on 20-foot poles. And right in the center is a 50-foot pole with a flag twice as big as the others of Israel. And we got 150,000 people every morning and evening coming out of this highway, seeing that Israel flag, the United Nations, it's chief among the nations, with fountains in here, with a projected United Nations of Prayer here, with the whole IHOP ministry fitting in a portion of this in terms of our prayer ministry. I mean, lots of spatial ground with big walkways and parks and all kinds of park things over here, recreation for family, for children. This is what really excites me here. This is a walkway that's got an overhead, and maybe the overhead is 15 feet. It's a big walkway. Maybe it's 100 or 200 yards this way at the back of the land, and 100 or 200 yards this way. I don't really know, but lots of yards. Like one of them would be the Holocaust exhibition that we connect with Israel, and we say, hey, can we get some of your footage? So we have these video screens here with ear things with all different languages, 8 or 10 video presentations under this one, and we'll drive everybody to you, but let us use your stuff here. Because this Truman Legacy Park, the Holocaust. The next one, maybe the history of Israel itself. There could be 10 different video presentations, all different languages. One of them, like in Israel, is the Truman Memorial. Well, there's about 15 or 20 different things to do. It's this walkway. So we got this park, and this beautiful park with these fountains, these open broad walks and open spaces, picnic places. The Israel part here, we talk to universities, high schools, Bible schools, and say, hey, come and take a tour of this. We have all kinds of prayer centers and prayer walks, and I'm thinking of somewhere, I'm sure it won't be there, but like a wailing wall where it's like 50 feet long, 20 feet high, big rocks, and right in the middle of it is a screen 10 feet by 10 feet showing a live feed of the Wailing Wall of Jerusalem. I mean, live right there. And then we connect that to other prayer rooms across the earth. All these different exhibitions about Israel. We're training them. We have an Aliyah Center where people learn about Aliyah, not just Jews to return, but Gentiles to support them, showing the biblical and the many implications of that. Anyway, there's 25 different things we could do there. We wouldn't have enough space for all of them. A group of people will decide which are which. I don't care. I just want to see the possibility of Israel, a prophetic statement to Israel, being declared across the earth, a prophetic statement of God's purposes for the salvation of Israel. I've told you for a little bit, and I'll tell a lot more in the days to come. Right after that, the Lord began to highlight the Truman property. And like I said a couple weeks ago, I had probably 5 significant conversations about the Truman property over about 10 years. And I've had about 20 of them over the last 10 weeks. And one of the key people that God inserted into this narrative is Dean Bud. Dean has been involved in ministry in Israel for 30 years. And he was just here in town, and we ran into each other. You were just at the coffee shop, we were just saying hi to a friend at the airport, and John told me, hey, I got a friend. How you doing? Your first question was, hey, what's the Lord saying about the Truman property? And I looked at you, this is about the fourth conversation. I didn't say that, and I was like, well, what do you mean? Well, what's he saying about it? I got up, he was visiting, he got up at 6 in the morning and prayer walked the property. And I said, why'd you do that? And blah, 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 blah. All these things happen, and we've been together many times in the last 10 weeks. I think you've been here about 6 weeks out of 10 weeks, I think. Some big number like that. And so he's really shouldering this together with me and our leadership team, and involving a lot of other leaders from Israel and in our nation, and business leaders, and all the connections God has sovereignly connected you with. Somehow they're being involved. And tell us even a little bit about the rabbis that you assembled. We had about a 90-minute Zoom conversation with a number of rabbis in New York, Kansas City, Israel, that have connected to him, that wanted to talk to us and build relationship related to the Truman property. I thought, where did this come from? But anyway, just give us
we involved in a call to help bring Jewish people home. And in the 90s, it had to do with bringing Jews home out of the former Soviet Union. And since 2003, the Lord spoke to us about bringing them out of North America. How many people know that there are 6 million Jews that are living here in North America? Almost 2 million just in the state of New York. The reality is the largest exodus since the Jews left Egypt 3,333 years ago is before us.
There's quite a few remarkable developments that are in place, that are several already in the last 10 days. We have received commitments of several $1 million to help fund the process, but I believe it will be hundreds of millions before it's over, because it's an aggressive plan that we think the Lord is unfolding there at Truman. Many facets to it, but several million have been committed in the last 10 days. And the part I like is I never asked anybody. They were just people that made phone calls or came and visited and said, hey, the Lord is stirring my heart. I go, this is truly remarkable. Tell us about the rabbis that we met with for 60 to 90 minutes on the Zoom call. I mean, these are Orthodox, right? Am I saying
Orthodox rabbis.
Conservative and Orthodox. That's not the same thing, right?
No, these are Orthodox.
Okay.
And to be able to do something like the Truman Legacy Park, wouldn't you agree that that might
Oh,
have...
that's the name of it. They don't know the name. It's called the Truman property. The Truman Legacy Park is the name that we're going with, yes.
To do something there, how many people would agree it might impact Jewish communities all over Kansas City? How about all over America? How about all over the earth? Okay, we thought the same thing. And so we thought, if that's going to be the case, we better bring some Orthodox Jewish folk in who might not necessarily be as excited about IHOP as all you are. Yeah, are you with me?
I'm thinking they're not.
But I got to tell you, because I talked to some of these people afterwards, and even in the midst of the call, just doing relational things, you know, it was just like their mouths were open.
Each of us told a little bit of our story and what's on our heart. The rabbi of the largest synagogue in New York, the largest one in Kansas City, one of the key leaders in Israel, an Orthodox rabbi. They were telling a little of their story. I was telling a little of our story. We were mixing and matching, and it was quite a time together. And when he heard that for 22 years, night and day, it was just like, and you're praying for us? The rabbi in Israel said that, yeah.
Exactly.
He said, I'm a bit overwhelmed.
He wasn't just a rabbi in Israel. He was an Orthodox rabbi. He was a settler, okay? We're talking hardcore. But he fell in love with you in just because you told him what we do.
I'm joking about that. That's a good point to joke about. But no, the Lord was on that gathering.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know is that all Jews You know, I'm happy to have my son-in-law over here. Marty,
Time's just stand up.
there's Hein. He married my daughter.
Good to see you.
And there's Marty. Marty, just wave at the nice people. Okay? And everybody, but Jews who love Jesus, right? And we need, they're part of the family. But we also need to know the ones that we're supposed to express mercy to, which might be secular, religious, etc. And so we want to bring all the Jewish families to fall in love with Iowa and with all of you. And we hope to do our things even in the educational field, to be able to send people back into Jewish communities wherever you're from, and you'll know how to eat with a Jew, how to celebrate with a Jew, how to even talk to them so that a relationship can last longer than 15 minutes. What do you think? Can we do it?
Lou Engle. Lou Engle is a prayer intercessor God that does big, huge stadium events across the world. And I know, I've met Lou several times, but he started having these Israel revelations about Israel this past year. Well, Dean, my friend Dean from Canada, was getting these YouTube videos from somewhere about Lou Engle's revelation about Israel. He's just praying. If you know Lou, he's just real. He kind of prays like the Jews. You know, he's davening like this. You know, he's praying, and he's saying all of these things about Israel. And that Israel, there's something going on with Israel, and we've got to, God is speaking to me about the importance of the land of Israel, significance of Jerusalem, and all these other things. And he's doing a series of fasting over Israel. Dean is picking up on this. He sends me some of these videos. He said, "You got to watch this. Something's going on." Anyway, Dean is began to have these meetings. He asked for meetings. He said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you guys about Israel." He went to Lou, went to Mike Bickle, and immediately they started saying, "Hey, this was 13 years ago, by the way, that they got the farm. 13 years ago that they got the Truman farm, and it's just sit there. There's nothing happened to this farm. The farm sits on a road that is an interstate. It's been renamed I-49. Anybody, which he says is obviously Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49 is, I've inscribed you in my hand. You know, you will never be taken out of my palm of my hand. It's a very serious Israel passage. I-49, right here, right beside the interstate, all of this property. Nothing's been done to it. So he says, "Tommy, you got to come and you got to help me talk to Mike and to Lou about this, probably how we can get this Israel, because they're wanting to use the property for to talk about Israel, or to promote Israel." There you go, promote Israel. They want to promote Israel through this property, and they want to do this crazy thing. They don't want to offend the Jews or the Christians. Now, IHOB is really associated with a lot of other organizations, like organizations that would be offensive to the Jewish people. And I'm not going to get into the whole, missionary, that stuff like that. I'm not. That's for another time. But there's a rift, obviously, between Christian organizations and Jewish organizations. All right, we all recognize that there's a problem there. But Hayuvel, just to underline, we have, how do we get past that? Because Hayuvel we learned this, it wasn't something we knew, but we learned this pretty quickly, that servitude, the act of servitude, the act of coming to Israel to serve the Jewish people breaks everything.